Wonderful, thank you. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. You are here for a bit of a Q&A session about the Impacts 2025 to 2027 application that is currently open. My name is Casey Beck, and I am the Behavioral Health Program Manager at the Criminal Justice Commission, and I coordinate the Impact Grant Program. I'm joined by my colleagues here who are behind the scenes. We have Avery, who's a grant liaison, who will be an excellent resource should you have any SM Apply questions. I've got Will online as well, and he is the senior researcher that is assigned to impacts. Maybe returning grantees are familiar. And then I have a few other folks here helping out behind the scenes. But yes, let's go ahead and get
a cup of water, please.
And I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone to mute unless a question pops up. But what this session is intended for is really an opportunity for you all to ask any questions that you might have. I have prepared a few slides. Most of the information is just a re-presentation of the amazing slide deck that Will presented on December 15th at the Impacts Grant Review Committee meeting. If you have not watched that Impacts GRC meeting from December 15th, that is the starting point for which I would encourage you to seek your information. We did an in-depth review of what this application entails, the goals and priorities of the Impact program, the GRC's desires as to what these programs might put their best foot forward, and all of the different application components, including a very in-depth review of a new component called the Grant Program Operating Profile. So what this session is not is going to be a complete walkthrough of everything. If that's what you are after, I encourage you to watch that meeting recording, which is available on the Criminal Justice Commission's YouTube channel. And I've also linked it in this presentation slide deck, which we will send out to folks after we conclude today's session, as well as a recording to this Q&A. Yeah, well, let's go ahead and go through a couple of the slides, just like a very high level overview, and then I will turn it over to you all for any questions that you may have. Oh, and thanks. I think Avery put a helpful link in the chat. So that's a great place to start. So the program purpose, goals, and priorities of impacts.
Please send up a real list. But it's stop.
Thank you. But this is basically a focus on a high utilizer target population. The program seeks to fill a service gap for individuals who have behavioral health diagnoses and are high utilizers of criminal justice resources, such as jails, and healthcare resources, such as the emergency department and institutional placements. The program aims to reduce the number of jail bookings and emergency department hospitalizations for this high population, and divert those individuals to coordinated community-based treatment, supports, and services. Many more details about the purpose, goals, and priorities can be found in the solicitation, which is available on the CJC website. In terms of orienting you all to time and space, the impact solicitation was released on December 17th of 2025, and it will be open for 38 days, closing on Friday, January 23rd, 2026, so towards the end of this month at 11:59 p.m. The period here at the left that's represented in the dark blue, that says solicitation open, you'll see that the arrow in the middle represents today. We are about at our halfway mark through the open solicitation period. When the solicitation closes on January 23rd, as soon as we get back to work, on Monday, the 26th, we're going to take those couple of weeks to do application review, which is highlighted there in light blue. And it's important to note that staff may be reaching out to your primary contact during that time if we have any questions about your application. So we ask that you be attentive to your inboxes and responsive in a timely manner as that application review period flies by, and there will be a lot of work behind the scenes in the CID in order to prepare for that next grant review committee meeting, which is shown in that kind of green chunk there in the middle of February. And basically during the week of February 16th, the GRC will be coming together to review the applications and make award decisions. After those award decisions are made, that protest period, that standard CJC policy will be open for 10 business days, and that's shown in light orange. And once that protest period completes, it will be at that point that the CJC begins contracting, represented in that dark orange at the far right. Of course, we recognize that every single county and every single tribal government has their own contracting processes and review and approval with their own, local governance, and things might take longer than the 3 weeks that I've highlighted here in that orange. However, it is our goal to minimize gaps in funding for the folks whose project periods closed on December 31st, 2025. And for that reason, we really are hoping to get money out to grantees that have been awarded by March 31st of 2026. Let's see. So it's worth noting too that the project period for the 25-27 Impacts Grant Program is July 1st, 2025, so last year, July 1st, through August 31st of 2027. And you'll notice if you're a returning applicant, there's overlap with that project period. And any returning applicants, or any applicants, excuse me, will be permitted to backdate approved grant-related expenditures to that July 1st date. That's again in an effort to help minimize funding gaps for returning applicants. And speaking of funding, a breakdown of the available funding for applicants. At that December 15th meeting, again, I encourage you to tune in to the YouTube recording if you haven't already. The Impacts Grant Review Committee voted to set aside a little over $1 million for use by tribal government applicants. And per statute, at least one award must be made to a tribal government. That means that there is around $9.7 million available for all other applicants, including both county and tribal governments. That $1 million figure is just indeed a set aside amount that is reserved for tribal applicants only. In terms of a very high level solicitation overview, there are a couple application components that I wanted to orient you all to. We have your typical administrative and eligibility questions. Those admin questions, are about who should we contact if we have questions about your application, or questions about your program, throughout the 25-27 biennium. Are you indeed submitted by a local county government or a tribal government? So those are the eligible folks to apply for this grant. It also asks about, your fiscal contact, your award preference, should that be a direct deposit or a check sent to your local government? So those are all captured in those administrative and eligibility questions. Then there's an acknowledgement and required collaboration section. This includes, some of the requirements that are outlined in Senate Bill 973, which is the establishing legislation for this program. And this is a bit beefier than some of our other grant programs that maybe returning applicants are familiar with. And for Impact specifically, there are several required things that need to be uploaded and acknowledged and screened for. So we're capturing that throughout the application, but especially here. So please read through those acknowledgements in their entirety. If you have any questions about them, feel free to reach out. But those things include like medical assistant screening agreement, compliance with data collection and reporting as required by the CJC, tribal notification process and consultation report, required uploads for letters of support from community leaders and organizations, acknowledgement of government approval, if applicable, so things like that. Then we have a new application component called the Grant Program Operating Profile. We refer to it as the GPOP. And what this is really an operationalized plan of what your program intends to do. And it encapsulates many questions that have been asked in previous applications, such as, hey, who's your target population, and who are your partners in this work? But it goes into a lot more detail and is really intended to operationalize what you all are doing, what those efforts are. We'll go into a little bit more detail about that in the next slide. But then lastly, this budget projection and sustainability narrative. And as I mentioned, there's those required document uploads. I want to highlight again, the project period is July 1st of last year, 2025, through August 31st of 2027. This aligns with our other CJC grant programs. It really attempts to minimize funding gaps for those previous grantees who have maybe choosing to reapply, and gives folks the ability to backdate approved grant expenses to July 1st of 2025. It also allows for 2 months of overlap after this biennium ends. So the 25-27 biennium ends on June 30th of 2027, but going beyond that date to August 31st of 2027 for this project period will allow for grant closeout, which will be incredibly helpful. Again, that overlap will be forward thinking in terms of minimizing future funding gaps as well. Applications are due to the CJC by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, January 23rd, 2026, and submissions will be accepted via the SMFI grant management portal. All right, a little bit more information about that GPOP. If you are familiar with the CJC's specialty or treatment court grant program, very similar to the work that's undertaken by that program in terms of adherence to standards. At its core, it captures a range of program elements from program staffing and partners to individual participants' trajectory throughout impacts programming. So how are they encountered? How are they, screened for eligibility? How are they connected to those community-based treatment supports and services? Some GPOP items also contribute to local evaluation from the Oregon Health and Science University, Portland State University School of Public Health, and those are our partners in the research and evaluation work. And there are some items that we've included in that GPOP that will really help give those researchers a base level understanding of what your programs aim to do. And it's important to note too that the GPOP items ask about proposed programs for this biennium. It is not a historical document capturing what you've previously done. It is about what you are proposing to do with money, if received, for work between July 1st of 2025 through August 31st of 2027. And we want to acknowledge that this GPOP is, a pilot. It's kind of our first iteration and go at this kind of work for impacts, and it may not fit perfectly with every possible iteration of impacts programming. But we are open to hearing feedback, and we look forward to incorporating that feedback in the future. And we're frankly really excited about this, and we're hoping that it takes a lot of the lift off of that, getting that deep understanding of how programs operate. I also wanted to highlight that there will be some data elements for returning programs. And basically we wanted to, the grant review committee wanted to assess and evaluate any progress that has been previously made, but in a limited way. And to do so, acknowledging that some grantees from the last biennia are likely to apply again, we will be presenting a few data points to the grant review committee for those returning applicants only. And the goal here is to really just illustrate the number of participants and the council service delivery of grantee programs for the kind of last 5 quarters that were available, that data at the time of poll, which ended up being July 1st of 2024 through September 30th of 2025, since all of those programs were operational for at least a portion of that period. There are 4 total data points that we plan on presenting to the GRC. It will be up to the grant review committee to decide how to assess those or apply them if needed. But they include the number of newly enrolled clients during the review period. That review period, again, that's July 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025. Number of returning clients, volume of service provision to returning clients, and spending patterns. All of that information was reported by those previous grantees into RIDECAP or to the CJC directly. It was the expenditure reporting. So there's nothing that you need to do. Just know that these things will be examined as part of the application review process. Lastly, we are planning to develop a scorecard. This is very similar to the process followed by that specialty or treatment court grant program that the CJC operates. We are intending to measure program elements using several sources, including the organ administrative rules for impacts, scholarly evidence, findings from qualitative research, narrative reporting, etc. Once the solicitation closes, our research staff are going to be deeply analyzing the responses provided and producing kind of a scorecard for each applicant. And the items that align with available evidence will receive a positive rating from staff. Not every item is going to receive a rating or be scored. And it will be up to the grant review committee to determine how those scores are applied in this competitive process. So that is yet to be determined by the GRC. And then, as I mentioned previously, there will be the limited number of data points, those 4 data points included as part of this kind of general information to be assessed for returning applicants only. So just a couple of reminders here. Applications must be submitted by a county LIPSIC if you are a county government, or by the tribal government if you are a representative of the tribal government. There are several required components to be uploaded, including letters of support, consultation plans, etc. If you have not yet started on those, I strongly recommend that you start on them as soon as possible. That takes coordination and planning, and these are due on the 23rd. A reminder that this is a competitive grant. There is no formula funding here. So ask for what you need and know that it is a request, and it will be up to the GRC to determine what funding is available and awarded. And in terms of resources, again, for an in-depth overview of what we are asking in this application, program priorities, GRC thoughts, etc., I really recommend you watch the December 15th Impact GRC meeting and the solicitation that is published on our website. There's one for county governments, one for tribal governments. They're nearly identical, but there's so much information available there, including many more details and all of the application questions and GPOP questions that are asked, as well as a sample of the contract that you will be required to sign should you be awarded funds. So those are resources that are available to you. Use them. And then lastly, just wanted to highlight that my colleague Avery is available for any questions as it relates to the SM Apply grant management portal and kind of like completing your application, getting those document uploads, etc., login credentials. If you have anything to do with SM Apply, please feel free to direct those questions to her. As far as programmatic questions, please direct those to me. But I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen and open it up to you all for any questions. Yes, hi. Cool, I see a question.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I am hoping to get a little bit of clarification around Lipstick being the organization applying and how the money then would it be distributed to Lipstick, and then they would be the county would be the subrecipient of that, whichever part of the county that the money was intended to go to. Just kind of that's a deviation from former applications. So I'm just wanting to get a little bit more clarity around that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I should clarify, it definitely has always been a requirement of impacts for the application to be submitted by the county Lipstick. That's outlined in Senate Bill 973. Each Lipstick, though, as part of that application, it could be like just a formal blessing, and maybe, for instance, that Lipstick decides that that grant money should go to a local behavioral health department or tribal police department, et cetera. And that would be specified in the administrative questions in the fiscal specifically. I guess I think that's all that I can share on that, but I will look to Avery, who's actually in my office, to see if there's anything additional that you would add.
No, I think that's correct. I think just to clarify, if it is a county applying, the county is the applicant. It is the Lipstick that is approving it.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Well, good morning. Thank you for that, Casey. I actually answered a couple of the questions that I already had related to the verbiage that was in there, getting the Lipstick approval, et cetera. I did have one clarifying thing for those tribes, is we have some overlapping service areas. If we have a multiple county service area, is there guidance on which Lipstick we should reach out to? Do we just randomly pick one, or?
Yes. Oh, right. Thank you so much for that clarification. And yeah, I'm happy to clear that up. So if you are a tribal government applying, your application, and this details it in the solicitation itself, but a tribal government application must be submitted by that tribal government. So you do not have to worry about getting Lipstick approval for your tribal government application. And vice versa. So if it's a county application, that must be submitted by a Lipstick. You do not need to have your tribal government that is in that jurisdiction submit your application. So Brian, just to confirm, for CT-CLUSI, it would be the tribal government that applies. You do not need to have your local Lipsticks do any part of the application. However, there is that consultation component that is a requirement, as statute requires it for Senate Bill 973. But what that consultation component is really an effort to collaborate with those overlapping service areas of tribal government jurisdictions and county jurisdictions. And so there might be your opportunity to at least loop in the Lipsticks and counties in your service area of your plans, maybe ask for any input or feedback. But that would be the extent of any county or Lipstick participation in a tribal government application, and vice versa.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, because I was actually just pulled up the NOFO, and on page PSO8, it says tribal governments with a local public safety coordinating council within their service area applicants must include a report of the input from the Lipstick, and to the extent feasible, an explanation of how the input was incorporated into the design of the program. So
yeah,
just making sure.
That's that consultation component, and in years past, that has been anything is as formal as maybe a tribal government being a guest presenter at a lipstick meeting to say, hey, here's our plan, wanted to keep you informed, or as informal as an email correspondence of sending off to maybe a county contact saying, hey, here is our tribal government's plan. Do you have any questions or feedback? And here's our contact should you need us in the future, and vice versa. We would require, that is a requirement of all counties, to reach out to the tribal governments in their jurisdiction of any overlapping service areas. We ask that you reach out to the tribal governments the same way of seeing if there's any input, feedback, questions from those tribal governments about the program proposal for those county jurisdictions. So you nailed it, Brian. And any further questions, feel free to reach out. But yes, the consultation is required, and it can be as formal or as informal as meets the needs of your jurisdiction.
Perfect. Thank you. And I did have two other questions. Do you want me to ask them now or jump back in line?
On the
No, we'll
floor.
take up everybody's time. All right. Referencing the indirect cost rate, the 10%, unless you have a approved indirect cost rate agreement with the DOI. So as we just went into 2026, our current indirect cost rate is in negotiation. Do we budget in that based on our most recent approved? Obviously, we won't be able to draw down at that rate, but do we at least budget for it rather than have to come back to the board and ask for a modification?
Yeah. Oh, excellent question. Yes, so let me answer that in two parts. First, the CJC will honor any federally negotiated IDC rate. So the 10% limit does not apply to tribal governments for those admin and indirect cost rates, which, Brian, I know that you're familiar with. But that's a good point about it being so early in 2026 for those negotiations to be ongoing. I like the idea of you budgeting for what's under negotiation, or what you have as the most recent available information, and know that an adjustment request to move over any admin costs, or lower those admin costs if they end up being lower, that's absolutely a possibility, and would not require any heavy lifting. So give us the information that you have available, and budget for what you're planning, and we know we'll continue to be flexible, and obviously respect any of those federally negotiated IDC rates.
All right, easy peasy. Thank you. That's all I got.
Michelle, I see your hands up next.
Hi, yes. I just wanted to get a little more clarification on the lipstick versus the county applying. So like in the portal, it asks for contact information. And so is that all supposed to be from the lipstick, or the county is actually doing that? And how do we show that the lipstick is given approval if that's all that's really required?
Yes, so yes, if the county is operating the program, which I imagine that would be the case for almost all county governments, and it would not be the lipstick that's operating the program, please do put your primary contact, the person that we would be reaching out to for the specific questions about the program, and basically our number one person that we can reach out to. So your understanding of that is correct. And for what to do for lipstick approval, or like buy-in, it will be required before the actual contract being signed, or I think, or before money is dispersed. Maybe it's actually before money is dispersed, that you have received lipstick approval for your program. But in the meantime, I think all that would need to be demonstrated is a discussion of that collaboration with the lipstick, and maybe like just a detailed documented process of, hey, we have buy-in from our lipstick, and these are the comments that we've incorporated into our program design, and just a formal submission of the application. By doing so, you're acknowledging, like with a check box, that the lipstick has approved your plan, and that, yeah, the actual clicking of the buttons and submission can be done by the county with that approval, if that makes sense. Do you have any further questions?
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is that when we fill out the application, we fill it out like the county is actually the applicant. And we just have to have, second to that, we have to have the lipstick approval for the application. It's not lipstick applying for it. It's the county basically looking, when they're filling out the questionnaire, they're filling it out as the county is the applicant.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Christopher, I see your hand's up next.
Hi, thanks, Casey. Another budget question on that 10% admin cost threshold, but from a county applicant. So if there's another category for contractual services, if in our projected budget within contractual services, that contractor includes admin, overhead costs, indirect costs, is that able to stay contained in contractual services, or is that contribute toward the 10% threshold of admin costs?
Great question. Yeah, that would not contribute to the applicant's admin costs. So all subcontracts, any contracted services with another provider, those negotiated admin cost rates do not need to be, reported in detail to the CJC and do not need to apply or contribute to the county or tribe's admin costs. So yeah, you can focus on what admin costs are really being utilized by the county, for instance, only, and you don't have to worry about those subcontract admin costs.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are there any further questions at this time? Katie, I see your question in the chat. Thank you so much for asking about a copy of the slides. We will be emailing that out to folks either later today or tomorrow, I think we said.
Thank you so much. I'll ask a quick question in reference to that. The reason I was hoping for a copy of the slides is I can't recall from earlier in the slides if there was a description of how the review committee is going to be, like what the scoring criteria are, like how that is weighted in terms of the application as we're completing applications and where to focus time on and all of those pieces.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And you're not missing anything that was not included in this slide deck today. That I would say my response is in twofold. So first, that is yet to be determined in terms of concrete weights. The CJC will be presenting options to the grant review committee in February in terms of like, hey, here are the scores. You can apply a lot of weight to them, no weight to them, a little weight to them. But the scores are, going to be captured by that GPOP. And I would say the second part of that is there was a lot of discussion around this at that December 15th meeting, that impacts GRC meeting. And I think it would be totally appropriate. We can include that slide deck and the link to that recording in our email communication out to folks. So it's kind of like one all encapsulating resource and reference email that's later today or tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely want to acknowledge that, you know, the seniors even understand that not having like a specific rubric that you can look at alongside as you're completing your application can be challenging. But I would say in terms of like actual priorities, you're looking for application completeness. That's the number one priority, is making sure you have the required documentation, the check boxes checked, and an explanation of your program. Because the scores are still so in pilot mode and so new, I imagine that they will be a helpful tool to the GRC, but we don't yet have standards to adhere to for impacts. So I would really just focus on giving a complete look into your program and answering things completely, making sure that you are identifying and defining your target population, and describing your plan to serve that target population and to community-based treatment supports and services. At that core, that's what impacts is and what we are looking for in applications. Any other questions at this time? Yeah, Brian.
I thought I'd at least break the silence. I did have a quick question regarding the travel and training category. So I noticed this time it's broken down by individual travels and individual trainings. Do you know, is the GRC open to putting in a bulk, essentially budget for that, as we don't know for, you know, the next 18 months what trainings are going to be available, where they're going to be at, what those expenses might be, you know, as long as we follow existing policies and procedures regarding expenses and things like that. But I didn't want to put it in if it would, you know, negatively impact the application, but I also feel it's something important to have included.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. I would say best guesses and estimates and desire, I think, would be great to highlight. So if there is, for instance, a desire for, you know, your tribal BD to take some sort of like CIT training or, you know, some sort of behavioral health training, like I would say that would be a detail that would be helpful to say like, hey, we're hoping to solicit this type of training and we're budgeting this amount for it, for maybe 4 attendees or something like that. That level of detail would be helpful if you don't have specific trainings in mind.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Michelle, hi.
Hi, Casey. Good morning. I guess it is still morning. Quick question. I was just looking over the application. We're working on, you know, trying to, because it is a little more of an application than we have in the past, but I noticed that it does state, how does your organization plan to financially sustain CDHC, basically sustain the funding? So does that mean that 25-27 may be the last of the impacts grant, or what is happening there? Because I know with the legislature and I know the meetings that we had that there was not going to be impacts, and then there was some hearings and they decided to grant some funding to continue on. And so I guess my question is there going to be impacts later on? If not, is anyone going to be advocating at the legislature for future funding to continue to sustain these programs? Because as we've explained, you know, and then we are, you know, where we sit on the local public safety committee here locally. How are we, well, is there any ideas for future funding to, I guess, to continue these programs that we've developed from this funding?
Yeah. Oh, excellent question, Michelle. Thank you. So will there be future funding for impacts? Is a great question. And I would say there's definitely a lot of hope, more hope than I think that we've experienced in biennia past. And I know that you're intimately familiar with that circle as a previous grantee. So this last legislative session in 2025, impacts was officially incorporated into the Criminal Justice Commission's like current service level budget. And so what that means is that the CJC won't have to fight to get impacts like included on the list of things to be funded. The amounts are not specified though. And so we know that like there is it's included on our to be funded list officially for the first time in impacts history. And that is in a much better position than we have been in years past. And in biennia past, it's been about $10 million, you know, per biennia, per biennium. But I think that, you know, we're entering a weird budget climate this year. And I think that grant funding in general is something that is hoped for, but not promised. And I think that the strongest applicants for the impacts program would, you know, really speak in that sustainability narrative that you're talking about, really speak to what your plans are to use this impacts funding, but also be seeking out other funding opportunities to maybe braid in with impacts and make this program a strong, permanent kind of thing for your jurisdiction. I think that, you know, like Cow Creek has a program that is established and with momentum. And I think that, you know, speaking to the community's buy-in to that program, your collaboration with the county lipstick, et cetera, those are all practices that you know, add up in terms of sustainability. And I would encourage you to seek out additional funding opportunities, even if they're, you know, small, but anything to make this more successful and more permanent.
Do you have any ideas, or does anyone else have any ideas of other funding sources that would be compatible with this particular, other requirements of this particular funding? What we've found is it's kind of difficult because this is very specific, you know, specialized type of funding for a very specific population. And how we were meeting the needs of our serious, you know, mental health population was, we had maybe, if they were an elder, we had our elders program dealing with it. If they were involved with self-sufficiency, then our self-sufficiency. So we didn't have the, you know, it was just wherever we could, wherever they fit, victim services maybe, and then that's who managed the serious mental health, which, you know, is a specialized area anyway. So I'm just, I'm thinking that the only way is for us to go back to that, which didn't work, right? Now we have all of our members with serious mental health issues just like managed. It's crazy how well Alicia does. She's like, she's the whisperer, and she just, I mean, we have people that now have jobs, they're taking their meds, they're doing, you know, they've gotten married, they're stable for years, right? So I guess I don't know, and if anyone else on here has any ideas of any other type of funding that would be able to be braided with this, you know, kind of specific sort of service that's provided.
Yeah, no, those are great questions, Michelle. And I encourage you to maybe put your email address in the chat in case there are folks on this call who have ideas for additional funding streams. some things that, popped in my mind are maybe funding through Oregon Health Authority grants, and those diversionary service elements that might be an opportunity worth exploring. I know there's maybe some federal grants, opioid settlement funds that some other grantees have used in the past. But that's definitely something we can continue to investigate and compile, and make sure to share it with folks. And in the meantime, in your sustainability narrative, just sharing that you're researching, you're looking out for those. That's also acceptable and okay to not have everything sorted out. I don't want you to fret about like we don't have the other strings to include in this braid quite yet, but we're looking for those strings, and we're speaking with other grantees about what they're doing. That is an acceptable answer, and finding other ways to be sustainable, through collaboration and operationalization of your practice is going to be just fine. And then before we close, I know we're out of time, so if people have to go, that's okay. But you had asked about legislative advocacy, and the CJC, our agency at least, being under the executive branch, we are not permitted to advocate for our own, grant funding. But there have been, champions in the legislature that have really been excited about, the Impacts Grant Program. I know that there is a behavioral health committee and committee on judiciary. Those folks are, kind of at this intersection of behavioral health and criminal justice. I'd encourage you to reach out to your local legislator and express like, hey, I'm in this program. We have this operationalized for Cow Creek, and we want to see it go and continue on and maintain strength. I think that type of connection to those individuals is helpful. And then since you already have that existing collaboration with the lipsticks in your service area, maybe being a squeaky wheel there too, of just like, we want to see this continue. If you have any connections to the legislature, let us know, put us in contact, and this being you, since CJC cannot. But I hope that helps answer your questions.
Yes, perfect. Yes, our lobbyist is really aware of all this. So but it's good to also have a reminder, maybe in some of our meetings with you, Casey, just a reminder and what might be needed from us to advocate at the legislative level.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks.
Well, everyone, we are past time, and I will release you all to continue on with your days. But thank you for tuning in. And if you have any, further questions about programmatic stuff, send them my way. Any questions about the grant management portal or actually submitting your application, please send those to Avery. We will send out a copy of the slide deck and a link to this recording for the Q&A session. And we'll be sure to include some of those other resources as well in that email communication. So keep an eye out on your inboxes for that. But thank you all so much, and Happy New Year.
Thank you.